Hi, welcome back. Welcome to Creating a Village. Whether you're returning or joining us for the very first time, I'm your host, Millie, here to nurture the village within you and help us all thrive on this beautiful journey we call life. Today is a very special day because this is one of the first three episodes of the podcast. We're going to talk on the premise of it takes a village. We want to set the foundation for you and understanding why it's so important to not only partake in your village, but listen to the things happening around you in your village. So, let's set the scene, shall we? I would like for my guests, my beautiful, beautiful guests, to please introduce themselves.
I guess I'll kick us off. So, hi everyone. My name is Crystal Foy, a proud graduate of Howard University, class of 22, and I now work in the financial industry. And I'll kick it over to Malik.
Thank you, thank you. Hi, everybody. Malik Nixon. I too am a proud graduate of Howard University, class of 2020. Currently working on the West Coast in the tech industry, having a great time. Very glad to be here.
I'm so glad that y'all are here. I love these guys. They're so amazing. Okay. So, just to set off the conversation, um what is your familiarity with the phrase it takes a village? Like, have you heard it before, or is it just something you came across or resonates with you?
No, I think that that's a very common phrase, especially as someone born and raised in the Caribbean. Like that concept has always made sense to me. I think it applies to the fact that, at least from my experience, a lot of households in the Caribbean are more than just nuclear. So it's not just like mom and dad and kids. It's mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, cousins, aunts, uncles, and then extended family that isn't even blood relation family, but they're
Mhm.
always there, whether they live down the street in another neighborhood. You'll have these aunties that aren't your aunties, your uncles that aren't your uncles, cousins that aren't your cousins, but they all contribute in some way to like how you grew up, memories that you have. They're there at your games, they're there at your recitals, they're there to, pick you up from school when your parents can't do it. So I think the idea is very ingrained, at least in my community when I was growing up, that, it takes a village to raise a child, because also in a lot of circumstances there's a decent amount of not necessarily not necessarily single parenting, but more so like the parents aren't married either. So it's like, your mom might be the main parent that you're living with, or your dad is the main parent that you're living with, and then they're getting support from these other individuals to help them, raise you. So yeah, I think that's a pretty common phrase that's always kind of made sense, at least to me growing up.
And it's actually so for me, I definitely definitely a phrase I'm familiar with as well. I myself am not. I was not born and raised in the islands, but my entire family is Caribbean as well, and so it's it's also really it's also really really cool to see that idea has really always been so ingrained and constant. Like for example, so I was raised by my mom. It's usually not in our immediate household. It was the two of us, but when we still lived on the West Coast, there were many times where I would spend time with my grandma, and knowing that my uncles were also always around. Like I was, even though my mom has been like the main caretaker, you always can see the support. It's not just going to be from that leader of your family. That you get a chance to see it, to see it all the way around 360, right? So definitely a phrase that I've become familiar with, and I think that it means a lot, especially like in that immediate household, to be able to have others support, because like creating and raising and furthering families can be super difficult and strenuous, and so I think being able to have others to support and to lean on is it means, I think it can really mean the world, honestly.
Yeah. No, growing up, oh, my voice cracked. Growing up, I remember I would stay over my teachers' houses. I would stay over my aunt's houses, people from the church. Like I was everywhere. But it was also at the same time, like I just felt like it was so cool to be able to see how like different people grew up. Like I remember with one of my teachers, Miss Molly, because I was staying at her house during like the school year, I would go to school early with her. And that's how I learned to like oatmeal, having to put oatmeal in the microwave at school. Just learning like different things from different people and different aspects of the people around you. I think that's like very influential, and it really can set like a solid foundation for you and like how you live or grow up. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
and it's so funny too because even you bringing it up, Millie, I feel like my mom was an educator, right? So like a lot of the
Mm.
time when I was growing up, I would be at school, I was like we would be in the same buildings a lot of the times, but like even to that point of being able to spend time with like colleagues, like I was able to like make friends with like the other teachers' kids, like spend like
Yeah.
there was even a point where I went to this is gonna be making myself sound like such a nerd, but like one one of like one of the other one of the other like ladies who also worked in the building. I was super close with her family, and we were all very into Harry Potter. Like, we're very into like nerd stuff, right? And so like there was one time where literally I had gone to like a Harry Potter camp with them
Oh
because
my
like
goodness.
we become that close. I feel like I'm like in a like being able to have a village like where you like sometimes your parents are like, you know what, I don't really want to go do that, but peace, if you have a good time, it's so important. It's so
Yes.
important.
I
Yeah.
think it's also dope the different parts of your life that they have an impact in, right? So I think it's funny that my mom was also an educator. And so I call her my nanny, but it really means like godmother. And so my
Mm.
nanny worked at my elementary school as a librarian, like the head librarian. And I remember, when I was feeling down or if sometimes I'd get bullied at school, I would literally go to the library and like hide in her office, and she would give me snacks and she would talk to me about what was going on. And like it gave me a safe space away from home at my actual school that I could kind of retreat to when obviously my parents couldn't always be there, but this person who was another guardian in my eyes was always accessible to me and was always there if I needed some place to go to. And then also having someone to explain to my mom sometimes, like, why did Crystal get in this incident? Well, they've been harassing her for weeks. Like, this isn't just a sporadic, oh, she got mad this one time situation. She's been complaining about it for weeks to me. So also having that support of, your parents can't be everywhere all the time to understand, why is this thing happening? But having that other person there to kind of vouch for me, like, no, it's not her. These people are harassing her. These people are doing this, and she's been trying to cope here. So I think that's also kind of awesome when you have that village, that they're in different nooks and crannies to be able to be your voice. And you also sometimes need adults to talk to adults because they sometimes don't hear it when it's like kid to adults.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, so following up like on that point though, when is like a time that you felt the support of a community, but then like the other times like you felt the absence of it, like they weren't there?
I think
Oh my
I
god.
think I just spoke to the support, so I'll say for like the absence. I think when I felt it most is like when all my siblings kind of went off to school, like they went off to college or they became adults because like my siblings are like 8, 9 years older than me, or at least my like blood siblings are. So having that feeling of like, okay, I'm the only kid in the house now, and like who is my person, right? So that kind of felt like an absent of my village kind of shrinking a little bit because I lost, who I was accustomed to being able to lean into a little bit. But then I guess going back to support, I was fortunate that I did have cousins that it was like, okay, I can hang out with my cousins still.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, one of my favorite experiences growing up, which I definitely have always considered to be a huge part of my village. And so I mentioned a little bit earlier that my mom raised me, so I'm an only child. But at one point, my mom was really intentional about also trying to make sure that I was around other kids, or even just other like male figures who could have an impact on my life, right? And so, at one point she signed me up for what's considered like a big brother type of program. And from that, I think I started that program when I was like, I think I was 7 or 8, and from that, I literally like I ended up having an older brother who was essentially one of he ran the organization at that time, and one of the other young boys who was like only a year older than me. We ended up like becoming like the three of us like genuine brothers, like to this day where we talk and I consider them family because so many of my experiences growing up was spent with them. Like if they were, I would go and spend weekends. Like I have memories. Like for example, like one of my favorite movies of all time. I learned that it was one of my favorite movies. Spend time with them. It's like we would go take weekends. Like we would go get food. We always have like really important conversations. And I mean, obviously, it was like three guys, right? So we were able to like for example, we watched the movie 300. Like, have either you seen that movie?
No.
Okay, so 300 is essentially about the Spartans. Like it's the one that movie like We Are Sparta, like that one that's what
Oh,
this movie
I'm
comes from.
Spartacus?
Yeah,
Oh no,
yes, and
that's
then the one that where he does like the kick. Have you seen like I don't know if you've seen that
I think
scene.
I know what you're talking about.
just
Is
Yes,
it
continue
and
with
like
what you were saying.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
so it was like that's been one of I have memories of us watching that movie like so often when I was younger. And I mean, like long story short, but like that was one of my earliest feelings of community, right? Like being able to spend time with people and call them brothers and family. Like like my like so like my oldest brother. I mean, I'd spent time with his family, like, and I've been to his parents. His parents also worked in education, so like I've been to their schools. I've been to like being able to sit in their classes and like be able, it like that was I think for me such a formative experience growing up, being able to have brothers there because I mean like even though I do have brothers that are blood related to me on my dad's side, you don't really get a chance to spend too much time with them. So
Hmm.
that was probably like one of the very first instances where like having that village was really really formative and important for me because I was like and also sometimes it's just gonna give my mom a break. Just let
Yes.
her enjoy her weekends. I just go with the guys and I was good.
Oh, go off with the guys. That's so cute. Um, yes. I was trying to think of like a one where I felt community, but right now, maybe after I talk about this, I was thinking of like a time where I felt an absence of community, and it was more like a cumulative amount of experiences. So it was like I started school in a Montessori school, and so I was there until the second grade, and then I moved to a public school, and then, so, schools have zonings, like in the United States, schools have zonings, and usually this elementary school goes funnels to this middle school to that high school. But what happened was I went to an elementary school, started making friends, and then I ended up going to a charter school that was nowhere near the elementary school I went to. And then at some point, I was forced to play basketball. I didn't want to. It was an experience. And then after going to that middle school, I was no longer, well, I made the decision to go to another startup school that was also just going to be brand new with new people because I didn't want to play basketball in high school. So, in all those transitions, like between like 8th grade and ninth grade, I felt like a real absence of community because I was losing friends. I wasn't like, I would have this community for these years, but then it's like, oh, they're going over here to the regular school where they're supposed to, and I'm going here with absolutely new people. And then at this time, like, my parents were forcing me to places where I didn't want to. I felt like no one was listening to me, no one could hear me and my concerns and needs in life. And so that time was just a really hard period. Like my first year of high school, I would just be in class and I would start crying. I had no idea why. I would just tears. And so I feel like in that moment, I really felt like an absence of community, but it taught me that like life just goes through different transitions and you have to find your place in the different spaces that you go because you're not always going to be able to like bring people with you or like be able to communicate with the people that you used to be able to talk to. So, yes, that's a lesson about community and finding yourself where you go.
Oh,
Hmm.
also, actually, I had a really good question. So I'm actually not familiar with Montessori school. Is that what it's called?
Hmm. So, Montessori schools are basically like they're big on kind of like what is not experimental, but hands-on learning. So they're big on like you going out and planting plants, you going and examining bugs. We did like a lot of projects and it's like just very open. The class sizes are very small. There were probably like 10 in a whole entire grade. So yeah, like they're very, very small. And there's big on just that hands-on experience and like letting life teach you
Okay.
basically and dealing with things like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I highly recommend it, like for your
no,
children at a young age.
imagine. I can definitely imagine. I feel like to be able to give kids that experience. Oh, oh yeah. I feel like that has to be super valuable.
Yeah, it's expensive though. That's why I switched. So save up for your kids now, you guys. Save up. Okay, so I guess to this point though, like, what are some ways that you all might like actively seek to expand your community? Because like when you go to different places, how do you branch out, or do you branch out? Like when you go to different places, or when you come back to where you used to be.
Um, yeah. So, do you want to start this one?
You can go ahead.
So, I think so. The thing that comes to mind for this one is so obviously so both both Crystal and myself have in these last few years been transitioning into these new spaces, right? So I know
Mhm.
that for me, especially making this move to the West Coast, that was probably my one of my biggest concerns was being able to move somewhere that even though I do have family in California, they're not super close. So obviously, you're starting from the ground up, right? And so for me, one of the biggest things that I did when I first got here was I tried to be as intentional as I could as it pertained to like other alumni from Howard or even just from
Mm.
other HBCUs, right? I feel like especially when the pandemic was kicking off and people a lot of people from the classes of 20, 21, and 22 were beginning to make their moves across the country to start work. There were just these pockets of people who wanted to find community that was probably similar to what they had at school, right? And sometimes it's difficult because we leave our HBCUs you know, that are filled with individuals who look like us, but also, have such different backgrounds. And then we come out into these, whole different cities and states where that's not really always the case. And so for me, I try to be really intentional about like, even if I knew one or two people that went to Howard, went to another HBCU, I would connect with them and see, like, hey, are there any groups at all like that do something
Mm.
consistently or that, try to meet or try to do XYZ? And I think that was a big part of it because I mean, I think by the time that I'd reached my 1 year being in California, I had been able to start going to events that were like majority other or majority other HBCU graduates, or like events that were that were Afrocentric, that were kind of made for us by us type of thing. So I feel like it really just requires like sometimes you just have to kind of search and see like who do I know that's already here, and then maybe roots from there can grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that my approach since graduation has been very different. So, like I said, I've kind of switched into this, like, I guess, internal search for in terms of like interacting with my family more, prioritizing family more. And so for me, I think what I'm trying to build right now is my family community for the next generation. So like my nieces, my nephews, my godchildren, being the aunt, being the godmom that I loved. So like trying to
Mm.
emulate what my favorite aunt was like and what my favorite godmom was like, and creating these spaces for them to know like I'm here, even though I'm not physically there. I'm always a call away, I'm always a text away. Like if you need something, I'll be there. If you want me to come, attend a graduation, you just have to say the word and I'll like plug you into the schedule, like
That's so
that type
true.
of
Like,
energy. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to make evident. And, my nieces and nephews may be too young right now to kind of process that I'm there for them, but I guess at least making it clear to my siblings, like that's what I want. I want to be that aunt. I want to be that godmom that's like super there for them, even if I'm not physically there. So, like, if it's, I don't know, let's say something happens and one of my nieces or nephews gets an opportunity, but my brother or sister is like, this isn't in our budget. Like, we can't afford to send them to that program. It's like, okay, let's have a discussion between the two of us because me, as their aunt, would love to contribute to make sure they get this opportunity. I want to be
Hmm.
that person because I remember having that growing up. I remember
mm,
hearing without supposing to hear the conversations of like people in my family coming together and being like, nah, Crystal deserves this opportunity. We're going to make it happen, and I want to be able to be that person. So I think for me, the community I've been focused on has been a lot around like how do I align myself to be that person, and then also how do I not become forgotten? Because my nieces and nephews are young. I'm not home. I plan to, work
mm.
globally is the goal of like leaving the US and working in other countries. So how do I make sure they still know, auntie's all the way over there in Europe or Asia or Africa, but I know she'll hop on a plane if I call her and I need her. So I think that's kind of been my focus.
Oh, that's beautiful. Chris, you almost made me
Yes.
cry. Girl. No.
Like, oh, like especially and like, being intentional for like for the younger like the younger ones in your family, like so that way they can grow up knowing that regardless, like, they'll have someone in their corner, that they can have you to go to if there's an issue, or if things are great, like if they want to talk to you about what's going on in their lives. I mean, that is seriously building up, about like the generational happiness and support that's super important.
Yeah. That's very important. I know like for me coming back home, so like after leaving DC, I came back to Atlanta and I wanted to, be outside, be around people. Um but I like my room. I like my room so much that I stay in it. And like after dang near the whole rest of the year of when did we graduate, 2022? Um I still hadn't really gotten out to meet other people, even though I would always like talk to people about it. Like, I want more friends. They're like, Jada, you have to go to things. You have to go outside and meet the people in order to make friends outside of where you already have your friends. And so, like, Kaim had mentioned the Howard Alumni Club here, and I was like, okay, I'll look into it. And then I looked into it and I filled out the little like email address and stuff. And so I went to a meeting, I think April, month before April, and like it was great. I like met people, and then I actually got like an opportunity through there to meet to work with these people who were doing a clothing line. It's called We Are Black Wealth. Black is spelled BLK. But just like because I went outside and like went out of my way to, because I actually have no idea what part of town it was in. It wasn't in Atlanta. I don't know where it was, but like I went out of my way to go there to meet people. And at least like for me, I felt like that was a big step because they were related to Howard in some way. So we could talk about something. I feel like that's usually my fear when going into new things. But yes, so just being able to like find things that I can do like little by little is how I've been trying to get out into my community. Yeah.
Well, Millie, I
And
think that, oop, I was just gonna say, I think that something I've learned since I started working, right? And I think even before that, just learning about networking is like people love to talk
Mm,
about themselves. So when I don't
they
know what to
do.
talk about, or if I don't feel like talking about myself, I just make that person the most interesting person of my day. Like I ask them
Mm.
about their interests, their hobbies, what made you, start doing this, what made you come to this event, how long have you lived here? Like just asking questions and not like, obviously not bombarding them and like interviewing them, but like keeping the conversation flowing and then also seeing like if they ask the questions back because I feel like that makes me gauge as well, is this a relationship I want to pursue to see if we can like continue communicating, continue being friends, maybe hitting them up another time to go do something, is like if I ask you a question or if I ask you three questions and you don't ask me nothing back, okay, cool. I'm going to learn about this person and I'm fine doing that. But it also shows me like they're not as interested in getting to know me as I may be in getting to know them, which is fine. But I think that, that fear of like talking to new people, just default to like asking them about themselves because then you can gauge kind of how they're approaching the situation as well and you're learning about them.
That's
Yeah,
true.
and I feel like it's one of the things that I always try to remember when it comes to like going out. So say if I'm going out by myself to meet new people, from going to an event, and majority of people who are there are people I've never met before. I always sort of remember to myself that like if I'm nervous or if I, if that fear is ever there, very likely the people there are also in the same camp too, right? So it's very
Mm.
much so that to Crystal's point, I mean, it helps so much to be able to ask those questions or to, even if it's just to strike up, a specific talking point, because I've realized if you can give another person the ability to begin to feel comfortable in meeting you or like in having a conversation, you will also feel that energy. The moment I always feel like the moment that somebody starts to get going, they start to, they start to really get into the conversation, but at that point, I'm like, okay, now we're good. Like now I begin to kind of feel that energy a little bit. So now we can both feel a little bit less nervous. I always think helps a lot.
Okay, so it's giving work on my conversational skills and read. Got it.
Yeah, I think it might help you a little bit. You never know.
Yes. Okay. 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 I'm sorry. Okay. Can y'all give me an example of a time that you wait, no, I don't want. Oh, well, okay. I know the answer, but sorry. Can y'all give me an example of a time that you all had to like kind of step up into like a leadership position or just kind of take charge to maintain a part of your village or like just help someone in your village? And then how did that experience kind of like shape your understanding of like being in a community?
Yeah, well, that's a really really good one.
I could go first. At Howard, I think my sophomore year, I don't remember exactly what the event is. It was like during freshman week or something. And we were in Crampton and I was leaving and I saw a girl crying on like the bench leaving out of Crampton. And I asked her like, "What's wrong?" And she was Muslim. She had on her attire. I don't want to say the wrong word. And so she was just confiding in me. She was like, "Well, I thought the Muslim community here would be so much different. It's a lot different than she expected it to be." And she wasn't sure how she was going to fit into it. And then I was just telling her, "Well, I told her about the Muslim association that we had on campus and that it's just this experiences. There's different things. You'll meet different people, but it's only been like a week. So you still have time to figure out stuff." And then, I made sure she was okay, asked if she needed anybody, went about my business. Like senior year, um, she ends up seeing me again. She's like, "Hey, I remember you," or whatever. And then she was telling me, like, "Wow, you're the reason I stayed at Howard." And I think, like, even though it took 2 years, but just like moments like those, because just speaking to a stranger and then you don't even know if you're going to see them again. But speaking to a stranger and like pouring into them, making sure they're okay is like something that I feel is very valuable when it comes to like being in a village, because even if you don't know a person, talking to them is really important. Talking to people in general is really important, even if like sometimes it can take you out of your comfort zone.
No, that's definitely true. I think my story's a little different, but it also is at Howard because you made me think about it as you told that story. So I'll give background is when I got to Howard, I remember joining the honors program and kind of having the students who were international, um, and specifically from the Caribbean, kind of coming up and talking to me, as someone who's from the Caribbean, and being open to being my mentors, being open to helping me with the culture shock and giving me tips about like different stuff. And so when those individuals graduated and a new class came into the program, I remember taking the initiative to just ask our advisor like, "Hey, at the end of class, can I just like meet with all of them kind of in an informal capacity and basically do the same thing of like, "Hey, I'm here as a resource. I would love to be y'all's mentor. If y'all need anything, I'm here for y'all and I understand the transition is going to be something different." Um,
Mhm.
and I would say like that did give a sense of community. And I think it also left a sense of kind of like a legacy where like it was done for me. I did it after, and then those that I reached out to after me did it for those who came after them as well. And so keeping that sense of community of like, being an international student coming to the US for school is a hard endeavor. And personally, I'm a US citizen because I'm from a US territory, but I'm still coming from the Caribbean to the continental US. That transition is something different. And having someone, go out of their way to be like, "Hey, I want to contribute to your college experience." Like you said, keep some people at Howard, keep some people in school, helps people know like it is doable because look at this person who has similar circumstance. I was able to do it and I'm definitely going to help you be able to do it. But yeah, to all those individuals that I reached out to, they're still I still call them my kids. I still check in on them now. They've graduated, so I feel old because now I've graduated, they've graduated. Um, but it's nice to see, and it's also like you said, Millie, when they kind of come back and say stuff to me like, "I appreciated when you did this," or like, "You inspired me to do this." It's like, wow, those, 20 extra minutes after class that I took to introduce myself and learn about these people had an impact, that's going to last probably for years to come as we continue to, reach back into the program, help others that come after us, and also the impact that they had while they were there. So, yeah, I definitely think it's important to keep, you know, stepping into that leadership role in your community when you see it.
Mhm. It's funny too because my mine was also having to do with Howard, but it was more so like so when I was already starting to work, right, and so my experience was closer to when it was around maybe like the 1 year mark of me being in my full time, and I'd been able to begin working in or is an assignment that I was able to be working in a capacity where it was just I was able to work with Howard again and work with Howard students, get a chance to be kind of like the ambassador for my company. I'm sorry, Howard, to kind of like make sure that the connection was there, right? To make sure like that we were supporting students, and so this experience, I can't really go into a lot of it because obviously like it was kind of internal to work, but it was a really really important situation where these were I was able to work with a team of students. It was for a competition, and being able to be more than just an ambassador, more than
Hmm.
just a mentor for the students in that situation, being able to be a voice for them, to speak for them in an arena where they might not have as much leverage or as much room. I think made me feel as though, and I also want to say it certified how important it is to make sure that when we are like working capacities with trying to create a space that's better for those who are coming behind us, it shows like if you're able to step up and if you're able to step up and you know be firm about what these students need or about what they need to be successful, I mean, it made me feel as though like that position was somewhere where I needed to be in the moment because I could be able to step outside of just myself. I wasn't only thinking about what the experience would look like for me. It was about what it looked like shaping it for for more Howard students, more of a Howard community. If they want to make this a path they take, they know that their voices will be heard. And I feel like when it comes to building that village, even if these are students that I'm not going to be working with, for the rest of time, they can at least be left with the idea that there was somebody willing to be at bat for me, right? Like to be able
Mm-hmm.
to show up for me, to still give that support. And I mean, even in a little pod, I think that's still, the village doesn't always have to be like, this person is stuck here forever, and then they're always going to be in this circle. Obviously, it's just kind of like people you meet people and they're in your life at a certain point
Mm-hmm.
for whatever the reason may be, right? And it always adds something to your life. So I felt like that was an experience where, even though it pertained to work, I felt it was super gratifying that I could be more than just a professional in that moment. I could be an alumnus. I could be someone to vent to. I could be, someone that they could be able to speak their minds to. So I think that meant a lot.
I completely agree that like the village isn't just like where you're stationary at. I feel like villages consist of people that just pass through town. Like you just happen to pass by somebody and they said, "I like your hair," and then that changes your life, and now you want to style your hair this way or maintain it this way, and it was like a healthy journey. That actually happened to me with my hair. Like this guy, when I was transitioning, my hair just happened to get wet. And he's like, "I like your hair curly." I was like, "You're right." And I went on a natural hair journey. And now I'm so happy about it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely is really important to think about, like, because I know I just feel, whenever we talk about villages, of course at the core of it we do think of, I think we said at the very beginning, we think about, our blood family, but also those who we call aunties and uncles who aren't blood family, but I mean they may as well be, right? But I think, that's one level to it. But then also allowing those who even make any impact, whether it's, small or large, they may stay for the time being or they may stay forever. I think it's really, really meaningful to be able to think of a village as any and every person who's been able to step into your life and change it or shape it in some way. I mean, obviously, I know, like, with parameters, right? I guess we don't necessarily want to have to consider every single person we ever meet, but I mean, I think those impacts can be super important,
Mm-hmm.
at least in consideration to like what it means to, or maybe even in the sense of how you want your village to look. Like sometimes you can even think about, okay, well, maybe this experience wasn't 10 out of 10, or maybe I kind of wish it would have gone like this. That's a piece to your village, and then now you can kind of be like, okay, well, but now I understand, what like maybe the ups and downs can look like, or or what I really want my circles, my community to give out, and what I want it to give, kind of thing. I think it's all important about taking this.
Yeah, I definitely think like how we have immediate family and extended family, we have our
Mm-hmm.
immediate village and then extended village. Like that's what I hope to create, like a global village. Wouldn't that be so nice? Like, wow. Everybody learn from everybody. That would be so nice. Yeah, I'd be forgetting stuff. It was in my head, and then I thought about that. Hold on a second. Oh, I know. Okay. I was gonna ask, can y'all share like a time, like a funny moment in your village? Like, it doesn't have to have taught you something, but just like something funny that happened to you. Like, I feel like this conversation is so serious. I want to laugh.
Are you asking for like a funny moment that involved our village? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, or just a funny moment from your life, because technically your life is your village in the sense of the word.
Okay, I think I can kick us off. So I remember as a kid, I was convinced that I was Dora and you couldn't tell me no different. Like there was days I would wake up and I'd be like, and today I'm Dora. And it got to a point that sometimes, like, let's say, I don't know, let's say we went to church and I'm walking around and people are like, "Oh, Crystal," and it was like they were talking to themselves. And my mom would like let out these heavy sighs and be like, "She's Dora today." And then they'd be like, "Dora," and I'd respond. And
Oh,
so it got to a point where I started to tell my mom that she was Boots. And she was like, "Why do you keep saying that I'm Boots?" And I was like, "Because I'm Dora." And she was like, "What does that have to do with me?" And I'm like, "Well, Boots is the monkey that follows Dora around, and you're always following me around. So you're my Boots." And she was
oh,
like,
that's cute.
my mom said she was a little conflicted though, because she was like, in one hand it was cute, in the other hand it was like, this little girl just told me that I
Just
be
stop following
following
her
her around. And she don't understand I'm the mom.
around.
So she went on a trip one time, um, and she came back with a Build-A-Bear. And it was a monkey Build-A-Bear. And she was like, "This is Boots. I am your mother." So you can have this Build-A-Bear follow you around and call them Boots. But I am your mother. I don't follow you around. I bring you along. And I was like, whatever helps you sleep at night. But thank you for my
LOL.
boots. So yeah.
Oh, that's so cute. LOL, not you, Dora. I'm gonna start calling you that now.
Right?
I had all the Dora stuff, like the dolls, the plushies, the pillowcases, the sheets, the socks, the shirts. Anything you could think with Dora on it, I had it, for I was Dora. Like I should have myself, obviously.
Period.
That's so funny. Okay, so I feel like the it was oh my gosh, there's one word that I'm thinking of when I was a little bit younger, but I feel like it's kind of just like a fun, like just like a memory that just kind of popped out of me. But you might have to come back to me. You might have to come back to me because I can think about it in my head, but like
LOL, the way you're laughing, I feel like I should know.
it's not really a story so much. Okay,
That's
so
okay.
I'll go on and tell. So it's a super short, but so on the I think my mom and I've lived on the East Coast for a large part of my life, right? So we moved here. We moved to Georgia. We had a family there, and so one of the other family members we had was my mom's sister. She was also raising kids in Georgia, and so the story that I can think about, there was like one time where I think we'd been like barbecuing or something, and I remember like not being hungry at the time. I think my mom and I, we might have eaten right before I got there. That my mom was offering me, she was offering me like a hot dog or something, and I wasn't really hungry, and I remember I remember, so, I was like, I think I'm good. I remember my mom was like, nab the damn hot dog. I was like, I really didn't want it. I really didn't want it. I was like, I wasn't hungry, but like that memory of her saying, like, if you don't nab the hot dog has been in my mind like for years. I swear. I promise you, imagine I eat a lot. I eat a lot. I wasn't hungry, but like I literally had that in my memory for like so long.
Oh, that's so cute. Oh my goodness. That just reminded me of a story of like I told this story for like a presentation on Father's Day, like in elementary school. Um, I think we had to write like a poem or something. I don't know. But my dad had came home from working, and my dad's like very just out there, just amazing. And so he came home and he like opened the door and he was like rapping or something and he was like dancing in the doorway and then his pants fell down. And and then I just told my whole entire class that wasn't my story, but that's what that reminded me of. And I just thought that was so cute. Like there's just certain moments of your parents that you like will always be ingrained in your head. And yes, okay, what was my story? I
I
didn't
thought
have one
that
either.
was
That's
the
why I wanted you to
story.
go first.
I,
No,
I don't, I don't get it.
No, that wasn't the story, but that reminded me of that, so I wanted to share it because it was on my head. Um, oh, okay, this was my story. So, you know, growing up, I guess you could say I lived a sheltered life, or I just wasn't aware of a lot of things. And one day, my aunt was over our house, and she was like, "Oh, what do y'all have to eat?" I was like, "I don't know." And we had recently had like a rotisserie chicken, and she was like, "Oh, y'all have chicken." And so she started taking out the ingredients of mayo, mustard, relish, probably some other thing that I forgot about in the chicken. And then she started shredding up the chicken, and then she's putting it all together and she's mixing it up. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is tuna." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "This is tuna," because in my head, like in our household, we just called tuna salad tuna. So I didn't know that there was a difference between the two. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's this tuna, but with chicken." And then so like the next day I go to school and I tell my friends I had uh, tuna in the chicken form. And they're like, "Jada, what are you talking about?" And then I explained the whole story to them. And so now that's like a phrase, like tuna in the chicken form, because I didn't understand salad didn't have lettuce in it. Because salad has lettuce in it by definition, and from my understanding. Like fruit salad didn't even exist. I know the Wiggles sang about it, but it didn't like comprehend that you just mix stuff together and that was a salad. I still don't think that's true. But okay. That's my story.
Tuna
Yes.
in the chicken form is really sending me.
All right. But you know what? I love the description.
No, because I know like tuna is also a fish, but we literally didn't say, we just said, "Do you want some tuna?" And that meant the concoction of the mayo and stuff on the cracker.
I can't judge nobody for abbreviating phrases because I be telling everyone back home, if I say I want Cheetos, that means I want chips. So like if I say like bring me a Cheeto, I expect you to say which one. So I could be like, oh Doritos, oh Lay's, or whatever I want. But like Cheeto does not mean a literal bag of Cheetos, nor does
How is Cheetos an
cornflakes.
abbreviation for chips?
Because if I say I want a Cheeto, it means I want a bag of chips. That's what it means. Like
Okay, so she
it's
said
a
no
blanket
explanation.
statement. It's just a blanket statement. Like if someone says I want a Cheeto, it means they want some chips. If someone says they want cornflakes, that means they want cereal. And you still have to
Okay.
ask, which one are you talking about? Even though I've learned in America, if you say that, people think you're talking about, if I said cornflakes, they will bring me cornflakes. And it's like, no, that's not what I wanted.
Yes.
The specific ones, right?
Yeah.
Did y'all have like I'm just curious. Why Cheetos?
That's a great question that I've never gotten the answer to. I feel like it may just be because Cheetos are super, like, I don't want to say popular, but
Hmm.
as a kid, I feel like that's what people eat the most. Like, you get a bag of Cheetos. So it just became a
Uh,
phrase of like, I want some Cheeto. Then it was like, oh, which one? It's like, oh, actually, I want some Lay's. And it's like, why didn't you just say that to start? But,
mm, that's the
that's how the
question. Is that not?
conversation goes.
LOL. No, like y'all know the assortment bag of chips
Yeah.
in the house. Like the Cheetos are the ones that are always left because no one wants them.
Really? I feel like it's always
Yes.
like the sour cream or the Ruffles or like the ramen one
No,
that's in
like
there.
Oh, no, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
no, sour cream, great. Ruffles, great. It's either like Cheetos
Those
or
are
the Fritos.
The
Like
Fritos
either
could
of those
stay.
two.
The Fritos
those
can
can
Yeah.
stay in the box.
those yeah
Yeah.
those never got finished.
Like Cheetos get
Listen,
eaten if like there's nothing else and you just really craving some like crunch or
that's
something.
crazy because I will kill a bag of Cheetos real swift. But if I
Okay,
see
I'm gonna
someone
save my Cheetos for
finish,
you.
if I see somebody finish a bag of Fritos of their own volition, I'm like, so something's wrong with your taste buds because you had all these choices and you
And you
chose
still
that. No.
Oh, no. Fritos be smelling like feet.
no,
Okay.
that's right. I knew you were gonna say that too.
Yeah,
It's
no,
the
they
fact
do.
that it's
It's
accurate. Like the smell has been the same since my childhood. They've been
Oh yeah.
consistent.
yes, no. That's beautiful. Okay, on that happy note, we're going to close the episode down. So I would like to open the floor to the guests if you would like to leave any parting words, share your social media handles, the things you do that you want people to know about. Please do so.
I would say make sure that you're pouring into your village the same way that people have poured into you. I think that's super important, and that's how we keep it going, especially, for me as a person as color, specifically as a black woman, I think that pouring into my village for other, black little girls in my life is super important, as well as, black young men that are coming up. I think it's super important. So, yeah. And I make travel TikToks. So you can find me at stx.crys. And then if you really want to find me, you can find me on Instagram. We'll see if you can make it into the Instagram, but the TikTok is open to the public. And
She said
stay
you gotta pass
tuned.
the test.
You do. Stay tuned. I might be back on Millie's channel someday to
Of
broadcast
course you
about
will. There's no question
my
about that.
docuseries. Well, if the docuseries comes to be, we might be here again to talk about that. But
Yes.
yeah,
That's my turn now.
yeah.
Yes. You're the only other guest.
No, but yeah, so I think that the thing that I would love to leave off with is for any of those listening, do not be afraid that building your village or finding your community won't that it won't happen. It'll especially if you're having to restart, it'll take time, but I think just allow yourself to be able to go through those moments of learning what you like, and then obviously you can use your passions and your hobbies to build your village outward if you're having to restart. But I always want to say the moments we have where we feel like we're the most scared of having to rebuild or make those new connections to create a village or create a community. That's some of the best times that we learn about ourselves, and that always ends up how we end up finding other people who really can create what we're looking for as well. So I just want to leave that out there to anyone who might be in a new stage of life, transitioning. It's really really important to give yourself that space and time because it'll always happen. But as far as being able to find me, usually I'm just on Instagram. I do have a TikTok that's mostly just for my own scrolling. But usually on anything, you can just find me at Malik the Man. It's M as in Mary, AALIK the Man.
Period. All right. Thank y'all so much for coming. You know what? And you can find Creating a Village on Instagram at CAV_village. Yes.
Boom.
And we're also on Twitter and TikTok, but I have not touched those yet. So you can follow if you would like. That would be nice. Sure.
Now,
Okay.
you should follow. No, if you go hit the follow
And
button.
tell your
Do it.
friends.
Yes. Listen to him. Thank you. Yes, tell your friends. Share this with your friends so that they can expand their village and, learn something, feel something, something. Yes. Okay. So thank you all for joining us. Remember that in this, bless you. Did you sneeze? Sorry. Remember, in this vast village we call life, we're all connected. Until we meet again, keep embracing the power of community, sharing your stories, and uplifting one another. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep creating a village wherever you go. Thank you and see you next time. Bye. Yay! That was great. Y'all are awesome.